Building a Human Firewall Starts with Security Awareness. Next slide, please. This presentation is brought to you by HP. Next. My name is Dominic Listerman, and I'm the Vivint Security and Privacy SIG leader. I'll be hosting this presentation, and today's speakers are Anita Parrish. She's with the Education Portfolio Lead of HP Software, and Danny Harris, who's a Senior Security Consultant. Anita has over 18 years experience in training and documentation design and development, and she's helped to create the learning solutions that are supporting both software and hardware products and services. She manages the HP ESP Training Development Roadmap, which consists of both current and new learning solutions, and she's responsible for educating customers, sales organizations, and learning and development partners on the ESP education portfolio. Anita joined HP in April of 2013 and is located in Austin, Texas. Danny Harris is a security consultant and accomplished cybersecurity specialist. He's knowledgeable in all phases of secure software development lifecycle. He's a thought leader in information security, privacy, and related technologies. He has a wide experience in crafting security policies and standards that meet business needs and regulatory compliance requirements. Next. So just some housekeeping items. This is a live session. It's being recorded, and the recordings will be available to all Vivint members. And following the presentation, we'll have a session question and answer. So please just type your questions in the questions pane. Next. Webinar control panel. You can toggle the view between the full screen and the window mode by clicking on the window and the window. And then the questions pane is down under questions and chat. Next. So again, welcome to Building a Human Firewall that starts with security awareness.
Thank you, Dominic. Anita Parrish here, and I am the ESP Education Portfolio Lead. I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today to hear about how you can become more effective in your security awareness culture and how you can start building a human firewall through security awareness. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have a full agenda here. At the end of this slide deck, we have several slides that will point you to where you can find more information on security awareness training. As Dominic said, don't forget to ask any questions by entering them into the question box, and we'll try to answer all questions at the end of the presentation. So let's start with a polling question. Okay, so if you could just begin by just selecting one of the criteria that best describes your role. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Okay, can we see the results there? Okay, looks like we have a pretty good mix here. A lot of HP employees, partners, consultants, individual contributors, and both technical and non-technical. Have a few non-technical managers and technical managers of technical staff. So looks like we have a good representation today for a really good discussion. Next slide. So why are we here today, and why are we talking about security awareness? Take a look at some of these statistics. It's pretty scary. For every stat that I show here, there are many more just as bad, if not worse, out there. So I'll just highlight a few. 82 seconds, that's the typical time for when a hacker unleashes malware disguised in emails to when someone is duped and falls victim, or should I say a company falls victim. And in 2013, the cost of phishing attacks was $5.9 million, and we can assume that that number's only gone up since 2013. So both of these are social attacks, and a security-aware culture can help dramatically reduce exposure to these types of attacks. Next slide, please. So when most people think of computer security, they immediately think of the technology behind security, such as anti-spam, antivirus programs, and others. And HP does, in fact, have some great security solutions, great technology solutions for security. But we also have to believe that technology, while key, is only part of the solution, and that people and process are critical to security. And it's indicative in this quote by HP Senior Vice President of Enterprise Security Products, Art Gilliland. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand things over to Danny, and he's going to give us more of a background of the security threats and walk us through the steps for creating a security awareness program and how to measure success. So he will also be showing you how to get started through role-based training offered by HP. Danny?
Okay, thanks, Anita. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you may be. Let's just talk about some of the traditional technology defenses. And what I want to mention here is that there's a triumvirate, so to speak, of people, process, and technology. And traditional technology defenses are really, really important in preventing attacks. And we find that the technology area tends to get more attention, if you will, than people in process. So the traditional technologies include things like the firewalls, the antivirus, and intrusion detection, and so forth. And there's a really strong tendency for people to deploy and forget these technological defenses because these things tend to be productized. You set it up and you sort of forget it. They're easy to deploy too. And so there's a tendency to focus on the technology, whereas the people in process tend to be minimized. And yet all three components are really necessary for having secure systems and data. And so the graphic here is sort of the Mickey Mouse approach. And really what we want to try and achieve is something that's more balanced, where you have people in process that serve as a key defense element in your overall security program. And so we need to think of people in a sense like network sensors. They're distributed across your network wherever you have facilities, wherever people are working, and so they actually can act like a sensor. They can act like a firewall, and as a firewall will allow or block an attack. So people, you know, in a sense function as a human firewall, and they can detect attacks and they can raise alarms. And so that's also a really important function of your overall security program. And so, but just like traditional IT infrastructure, it turns out that people too need to get configuration and patching, and that means they need to get training. That's analogous to the configuration, and they need the periodic security awareness reminders, which is analogous to getting patched. And so there really is a strong parallel between the technological and the physical security implementations that we have, along with the people in process. So it's very important. And really everybody has a role to play in keeping the organization safe and keeping your data secure. So one of the essential components of a good program is make sure that your people are provided with the right tools and training, and that can help make your personnel into a human firewall and just add another layer of protection into your overall information security program. Well, what is a security awareness training program? Well, it's a comprehensive security awareness program. Really provides workers a full range of topics to help them understand what it is they need to do their job, and it relates to the kind of work that they do and the nature of the information and the processing they do, as well as any system responsibilities. So it helps people do their job effectively. And it's understand that security awareness training is not just a compliance requirement. It's really part of your organization's culture of security. It's really an integral part of your business and your overall information security program. And in fact, many of the compliance regulations and the industry standards all talk about having a strong security awareness program. Because without the knowledge and understanding of what to do and how to do it, there really is no security. So your people are a critical component. Okay, let's talk about leadership commitment to training. And it's so important. It's really key to the success of your overall program. And your leadership needs to commit to supporting your training goals by making sure that your staff participates in training. Everybody really needs to get a training that's appropriate for their role and responsibility. And so making sure that everybody participates is critical. The leadership has to model good security behavior. There's been some examples in the press recently where there's been some breaches, and the discussions came out in the emails that were released about some of the behaviors from a security perspective that aren't really very good. And so modeling good security behavior at the top sends an important message to everybody. And then living by the principles covered by the what's been covered in the training is also crucial. And then finally, integrating security behavior into job descriptions and performance reviews as appropriate. And let me just talk briefly for a moment about that, because it's a very, very powerful motivator for people. And so if your job description and your performance reviews encompass integrating the security behavior that's taught in your awareness and discussed in your policies, it really helps drive people's behavior to where you want it to be. In other words, in line with good secure behavior. Okay. The keys to a successful security awareness program include building a security-aware culture. And so the goal here is to maximize protection by having effective people, process, and technology engagement. And you know, it turns out that many people tend to view security as something that gets in the way of being productive. And it's an unfortunate truth that it many times is that way. However, in order for people to understand the importance of security, it's necessary that you help build a culture of security. And this has to come from the top, and it demonstrates management's commitment to protecting valuable assets, both physical and digital. And note that a culture of security is not just once-a-year training or a security week, W-E-E-K, because when you do just a security week, your approach to information security is weak, W-E-A-K. And so really a culture of security, it's a value. It's a corporate value. It's an integral part of an organization's DNA. And it means doing security all the time. And so organizations that have a culture of security are more likely to be protected from attacks because the people, processes, and technologies are actually aligned to maximize the protection. And that's this concept of the human firewall and integrating people more effectively. And so there's a strong tendency to emphasize the technology, as we talked about earlier, because it's easy to deploy and you can sort of deploy and forget it. But a key to the overall success of your program is going to be having a culture of security where you get everybody involved. So let's talk a little bit about role-based training and education. And it turns out that it's necessary for people to get the training that's appropriate for what they do. There's no need for the janitor, for example, to have sophisticated training regarding information security. They don't work with information. So you want to make sure that people get the right training for what it is they do. So there's two basic types of training that we'll be talking about. There's general security awareness training. Let me see if I can get my pointer here. Here we want the pen, right? So let's just talk about general security awareness training. So this is training that's really designed for the entire organization. It's information security training. It covers the general regulatory and compliance requirements, for example, payment card industry, PCI, HIPAA for the health insurance, and so forth. And the general awareness training covers things like email security, using the web securely, protecting physical security. So that's one broad category of security awareness training. And the other broad category is application security awareness training. And this is really something for your software development teams. These are people that are building complex applications that are designed to run and support your business. And it turns out that building secure applications is really a broad and complex topic that requires training and periodic refreshers, because the technologies are constantly changing. The threats are constantly changing. And so people who are building these systems really need to stay current. It's a dynamic field, and so making sure that your application development team has software security skill sets is very, very critical. And so the application security awareness would include things like secure Java coding, secure .NET coding, mobile security, web security, and so forth. So these are two broad categories of role-based training and education. Well, who needs to be trained? It's really pretty much everybody, all of your employees and all of the stakeholders, and that includes management. It includes general employees, including your finance and accounting, your customer support, HR, and legal, and so forth. And I would also like to add that it also includes third parties who are helping you, whether they be temporary employees or contractors. If these people are involved in helping with your information systems and data, if they're handling it, then they need to have training too. And certainly your IT professionals, project managers, executives, business analysts, your security and software architects, DevOps, all of your programmers, software engineers, your database administrators, your testers, quality assurance, and your network and system administrators. So really everybody has an important role, and everybody's role is actually different. People have different security responsibilities, so it's critical that you target the appropriate security for each particular role. You don't want to waste anybody's time, and so by targeting them with the right training will make a big difference for them. So how do you deliver the security awareness message? Well, there's two basic approaches. There's the formal versus the informal security awareness training. And the formal security awareness training is typically tracked and monitored. You'll use computer-based training, CBT, or perhaps instructor-led training, and people sit in a formal class or sit in front of a monitor for a period of time doing exercises. That's the formal security awareness training. It's easy to track and monitor. But also very important in your overall security awareness program is having the informal delivery. And informal delivery happens during the day, and these can be things like infographics that people come across. It might be tip sheets that get mailed to people. There might be emailings and circulars, memos, notices, posters, etc. A variety of different things that just sort of are in the environment or people come in contact with, and they're profound and powerful mechanisms for taking the policy requirements and taking the discussion from the training and actually making it real. So a very, very necessary part of your overall program. And the fact is that people have different learning styles and needs. And so sitting in front of a computer or sitting in front of an instructor for an hour may not work effectively. So having multiple approaches to getting the message out is really, really important. And so it helps with people's different learning styles. And so the comprehensive awareness program has both the formal and informal security awareness elements. So when do we deliver the security awareness messages? Well, the purpose of security awareness is to help workers understand what the responsibilities are. So they need to know what to do and how to do it. And so the security awareness training needs to be done whenever there's changes or transitions in roles or responsibilities. So at a minimum, you want to do training at least upon hire and not within the first month. It's actually better to do it like within the first few days. Before people really get involved in systems and touching data. And then also during an annual refresher, because as I mentioned, the attacks and the technologies change, so people need a booster shot periodically. And training is also critical if a person's role or job has changed, or when there are new threats or else major changes in technology. And it's important to deliver the awareness messages before a person starts in a new role. The benefits of security awareness training. So you need to support technology with your people and processes. People people have to know certain things in order to do their jobs. So awareness training is one of the first steps in actually helping you develop this culture of security, and it helps people understand what their responsibilities are and what the appropriate policies and procedures are. And it also helps new employees become productive much more quickly. And so it turns out that people may not have gone to school for a particular subject, or they may not have learned about it on the job or elsewhere. So having the training can help give your staff that knowledge they need in order to do their job. Or it could be knowledge may be out of date and needs to get updated or current. So this is the patching that we talked about earlier. The training can really help with that. It's also possible the topic may not be thought of as being important for what they do, but it actually is really important. And so the training helps emphasize that and reinforce the organization's security culture. And it could be that the topic itself actually is very complex and actually requires some serious education in order to help people really get their arms around it. And so meeting compliance requirements, there's a lot of compliance requirements, as I mentioned earlier, the payment card industry, PCI data security standard. There's a bunch of other abbreviations up here, ISO and FISMA and Gramm-Leach-Bliley, GLIBA. And so the technology, the training helps support all of these technologies and makes it work for your organization. Okay, so and knowing what to do means that people will be able to prevent, detect, and respond to attacks more effectively because they are part of your human firewall. And then ultimately, they can the benefits of the training can help address the rapidly changing threat environment. Okay. So it turns out there's a great study done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and this was done in 2014. And this study addresses how security awareness training works. And they said that protection relies on a fully engaged and knowledgeable workforce. And 42% of respondents said that security education and awareness for new employees played a role in deterring a potential criminal, which is really powerful. And they also said that companies without security training for new hires had higher financial losses than those who actually do the training for the new hires. So I think it's really cool to see the data that actually supports the idea that security awareness training can make a big difference. Well, let's talk a little bit about the HP security awareness training and what we offer. So the basic course design is we have a role-based curriculum, and it's self-paced learning, highly interactive. It's computer-based training, and there's over 100 hours of content that's focused on creating secure software as well as general security awareness. There are over 60 courses, and each course has a different level, or there are different levels, 100 through 400. So we have the foundational material all the way up to the advanced material. And the software security awareness course actually addresses best practices from the PCI standard, OWASP, and a variety of other standards. And all courses have some internal quizzes and formal exams. And so they cover technologies such as Java, .NET, iOS, Android, and C and C++. And it's role-based, which means that there's training available for different roles, such as your developers and your architects and your test personnel. So I just want to talk a little bit about the security awareness content and the audiences. And we'll start here at the bottom here with general audiences. At the base of the triangle where it's broad, that's where we have broad generalized knowledge at the base, where we cover information security training basics, literacy and policy. We cover basic regulatory and compliance content, and this is really applicable to all audiences. As we move up the triangle and our level of training increases, and there's more details here for IT professionals. We cover IT security. Application development teams have topics that address application security and design. The programmers have content available on secure coding, and the testers have content that addresses security testing. And on this side of the triangle, we address the technical compliance content for all all levels of your development teams, there's technical content that addresses the compliance regime, such as the payment card industry and ISO 27000, etc. So your entire IT team can get that compliance content to meet the, for example, the PCI requirements. Additionally, we have the Information Security and Privacy Awareness Training Program, also known as ISPA. And ISPA applies to general audiences, IT professionals, as well as software development teams. And ISPA covers a variety of topics that are appropriate. Let me just see if I can get my cursor. Here we are. So these are the topics that this particular training program addresses. So there's modules on email security, malware awareness, mobile device security, password security, phishing awareness, social engineering, physical security, as well as travel security. So these are topics that impact everybody more generally and are applicable to all job roles and responsibilities. In addition, we have a variety of supplemental materials, the printable tip sheets, infographics, and some interactive challenge exercises that are all part of the course and make things very, very interesting. Okay, well, let's just talk a little bit more about ISPA and some general information. So the audience is really the general staff and includes people like human resources, legal, marketing, finance, etc., as well as your IT team. And the goals of ISPA are to help recognize the values of different types of information, understand the scope, nature, and origin of the diverse risks to the information, and to help people behave proactively in order to protect their information in their everyday work. And so there are these modules that we have, and they're e-learning, and they focus on 1 to 3 learning objectives, so it's a bite-sized, easy to handle and digest. And there's an interactive challenge that's designed to engage the learner and put their knowledge to test. So it's just not being spoon-fed information, it's actually take the information and apply it in a real interesting way, and it's fun to do. And then there is a formal assessment at the end of the module, so you can get some metrics that way. And then ultimately the duration of each module is about 10 to 15 minutes each, so it's not a terribly big time sink, so that's great. And just some of the ISPA training program supplemental materials are very colorful, and the idea is to make the training a little bit more engaging and fun to help reinforce the concepts and address the security behavior. So there's the printable tip sheets, which are tools to break down a larger concept into short, easier steps. They have the eye-catching infographics, which can be printed out and turned into posters, which are actually very nice. And then finally, you have these interactive challenge exercises. As the student is interacting with the training, these exercises make it fun and helps the students internalize that learning and hopefully take that and practice it in the office. And the last major set of training offerings we offer is the PCI Essentials classes, and these address the payment card industry security awareness training requirements. And so these classes address all of the critical topics required by PCI: physical security, anti-malware, avoiding malicious downloads, working remotely, social media, protecting cardholder data, password policies, email and browser security, social engineering, and mobile device and tablet security. All of these things are required to be compliant with the PCI training requirement, and we offer that, and it is appropriate for all of your audiences. So the PCI Essentials are very colorful and interactive. They have 10 interactive modules. It takes about 15 minutes to do a module, and there's quizzes and there's interactive real-world scenarios. And the thing that's nice about these real-world scenarios is they're based on things that actually happen. So you learn about a topic, and then you have to do this real-world scenario, and it's really based on something that happened, and it helps the user, the learner, understand what to do and how best to respond. So it's actually very nice. It's an interactive training, so there's audio narration and animation, which helps make it engaging and interesting, and there's problem-solving exercises, and you get a certificate of completion, and of course there's the PCI compliance tracking, which is important for your metrics. So that's a great thing. So I just wanted to slice the HP software security courses by topic, and we talked about these earlier, and at a very high level for your software development teams. So let me just highlight that here. Here's the thing. So for your software development teams, we offer topical-based software security. So there is actually security awareness for your development teams. There's secure software design. There's security engineering. There's lots and lots of stuff on secure coding and information on doing security testing, which is not the same as regular functional testing, and security testing is critically important for the success of your applications. So we offer that, and there are a variety of learning paths for your programmers. For example, there's different ways of slicing and dicing all of these courses. So you can look at it by programming language, and we offer all of these popular programming language with details on how to code securely, as well as you could look at it by programming platform. So we have web and mobile and thick client, and so for all of these different platforms we have training. And so these courses provide technical, detailed training to help your development team know how to build secure applications and avoid the pitfalls that result in security bugs. And so you can select courses to take based on the programming language or platform. There's lots of flexibility, and it's a very comprehensive and powerful set of training. Well, how do you start building your human firewall? Well, if you have a first-time security awareness program, it's really important to get senior executive commitment for your program, and that means two things. Resources, and that's staff and budget. It's absolutely critical. You've got to get your senior executive commitment, and you also need to have commitment for the time to take the training. I had a really interesting experience where at one organization, one of the leaders said to me, "You want what? You want my people to take a 30-minute training? That's 30 minutes of them not making money for this organization." And you know, it was a real issue for that particular individual, but it's critical. Certainly from a compliance perspective, you've got to make sure your staff has the appropriate training. And as we saw earlier, having training actually does make a difference in the overall security of your organization. So you might have to provide some compelling arguments to get the executives to agree to the training, but it's very, very important. You may need to get some outside help, and we can help you with that. It's not easy to put a successful training program together, and outside help can be very good to help jumpstart that. You need to build a team or assign a responsible party for your program, and you've got to design a training plan. You need to decide on the training messages and the audiences. You need to put together a training schedule, and it might be helpful, again, to bring in a third party to help leverage their training to help you with that. Then you need to execute your plan, and then look at those results and adjust your strategy as necessary, and then execute again. And that's for your first-time security awareness program. If you have an existing formal security awareness program, it's important that you evaluate the effectiveness of your program, and you want to look over your existing security awareness training. You want to make sure your messages are current. You want to make sure the right audiences are getting the right messages, and you need to ask, are you meeting your compliance needs? And if not, then you want to make sure that you update your program and your training offerings, and we can help you with that. And then you want to adjust your process as needed and then execute. Okay. So what are some of the success factors of a security awareness program? Well, it's important to note that training is not a one-time activity. You have to have annual training requirements for all of your workers, and you're going to need refreshers, certainly for your technical subjects, because your attacks and defenses are always changing, and people need to stay current. And so a culture of security is one that supports and appreciates the value of security awareness training. So it's helpful if you actually have a culture of security, or if you're building a culture of security. It's really important to make your training relevant to the students, and I think it works most successfully if your training matters to the student in a deeply personal way. So from my perspective, if you can make the training personal personalize the training to what does it mean to me. It makes the student more likely to grasp and retain and implement what you talk about and what the training discusses. And the training content ideally should be strongly company-centric with real examples from your organizations wherever possible to illustrate breaches and to make the point that, yes, it can happen here. And then it's important to say what to do in the event of an incident so people have some idea of what's expected of them. It's necessary for you to track your awareness activities so you have the appropriate metrics that you can go back to management and say, here's what we've done, and here's where we are, and here's where we need to go. And that can help you measure the success. We said earlier that training is not a one-time activity. It's important to note also that you've got to provide multi-tiered and role-based training. Everyone needs security awareness training appropriate to their particular job function. And the reason is that different roles have different levels of risk responsibility, and not everyone, frankly, requires the same level of detail. And so therefore you want to create training tracks for your technical and your non-technical staff. So we talked briefly about metrics, and I just want to mention the importance of having metrics to measure success. And I'm not going to read these metrics here. They're here for your reading pleasure, but the idea is having some metrics to go back and show management, here's what we've done, here's where we're going, here's how we're doing. Very, very powerful. So here's some examples of some metrics that you can use in your own program to help you measure your success. And so I want to wrap up with 3 things to remember. That, number 1, people and processes are a critical part of your security culture. The software security and all the nifty technology, firewalls and intrusion detection systems in your IT departments can't do it alone. Really, everybody plays an important role in the success of your security. Number 2, the cost of security awareness training is very small compared to the cost of deploying vulnerable systems in the risk of a breach. There's lots of data out there that supports this statement. And you don't have to look too far in the news. Almost on a daily basis, there's companies that have been breached, and there's costs and impacts. One of the things I enjoy doing is looking at the 10K and the 10Q forms, which disclose the impact of breaches from these publicly traded organizations. And there's a really significant impact to a breach, and the cost of the awareness training is so much smaller. So it's a great investment. And number 3, security awareness is an ongoing effort, and it's just not a one-time event and a checkbox. It's something that happens every day, and a security-aware culture is one where programs and initiatives are going to be reevaluated and refreshed. And with that, I conclude my portion of the training. We can take some questions now. And Anita, I guess that's you, right?
Okay. Yes.
No, I don't know.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, we have a question here, and the question is, a good motivator for employees or anyone is understanding the what's in it for me. Is there a way to tie the personal gain to these types of training?
Okay, well, I guess I'll take that one. I mentioned earlier about making it deeply personal, and so it really is critical for people to understand what they're doing at work actually will impact their personal life. So, for example, you may have some sort of phishing exercise at work. That's something that a lot of organizations do to train people about the risks of opening attachments that just don't seem quite right. And so learning that at work is something that they can take into their own personal life back at home, because phishing attacks don't happen exclusively at work, they happen at home too. So there's a tremendous value. So anything that we talk about in the workplace actually are going to be, the things that are talked about at the workplace are going to be also beneficial at home. So that includes things like the complex passwords and email safety and protecting your mobile device, so that not only protects people at work, but also at home. It makes it deeply personal. From an application security perspective, it's necessary that the developers understand that if they're building applications that handle money or sensitive data, they're going to want to do that in their own. They're going to want other organizations that handle their finances and personal data to be building secure applications. So they have a motivation too to do it right. So I hope that answers the question. The strong motivation is it can happen to you at home or at work, and this is something that makes a big difference, and knowing what to do can protect you.
Thank you, Danny. And we have another question here, and it's related to how training lags behind hacking technique development. And so the question is so what percentage of attacks do you expect that the training would be effective in?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that. So let me just see if I can get my thoughts together here. Many attacks are things that are obvious and should never have been allowed to happen. And what do I mean by that? So from a security awareness perspective, let's just say email security. If people don't practice good email hygiene, then they're going to be likely to be a victim. And that could be prevented simply by people knowing what to do. Let's take another example, and let's talk about a software vulnerability that could have been prevented. A simple example would be, say, SQL injection, which is a very common type of attack. And it could have very easily been prevented had the development team known what to do and had they done appropriate testing to catch it. So I would say probably 80 to 90%, this is my best guess, 80 to 90% of the common attacks are things that probably could have been avoided had people been educated appropriately and behaved in appropriate manners. So there's always new attacks coming out, and there is going to be this lag time between the time the attack is out and the time that there are going to be defenses deployed. So the IT organizations often are a little bit more robust in terms of responding quickly than, say, the training organizations. But the fact of the matter is, training organizations can be very nimble too, and it could be rather than having a formal training, there could be an email or posters or some online discussion or a webinar that all can be used to help inform people of new attacks. So I would say most of the attacks that could have been avoided had people known the basics. And then, yes, there are going to be attacks that come out quickly and where the IT department and or the training departments are going to lag a bit, but it is still possible that if people know what to do and if they function as a human firewall, they can alert their help desk and security departments about things that seem funny, and it can be a great teaching moment and be used to help educate the rest of the organization.
Great. And I have another question. The question is, how do we continue the conversation around security awareness after the training has been taken or completed?
I'll take that question. As Danny alluded to, it's got to be an ongoing message. When he talks about week versus week, W-E-E-K and W-E-A-K, it needs to be an ongoing message. It shouldn't be just an annual requirement that you tick off of the list. I'd say that messaging should be timely and relevant. With the use of the supplemental materials such as posters, you have those around the office that can help serve as a visual. And then also having the training be relevant to a role. We talk about what's in it for me. If you have the students understand how it's relevant to their particular role. You get more buy-in, and you can create that more culturally sound security awareness as a whole, and makes it more ongoing.
Great, Anita. And I have another question that may follow on to that one. Can you recommend a rollout strategy?
Sure. So within HP Education Software, we have the Security Awareness Program that it's very accommodating, and it can meet organizations' particular rollout needs. It can be deployed all at once for annual training, or clustered that can be deployed quarterly. For the best comprehensive and behavior change, we recommend rolling out one module every 4 to 6 weeks to create a year of security awareness. So then that would bring about the the timeliness, and it wouldn't be just a reactive response to a breach. It would be more of a proactive program.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question, and this may apply to other languages, but the question is, are the courses available in Spanish?
We do have a few courses available in Spanish, but unfortunately not many. They're primarily in English.
Are there any other languages?
Not at this time. We're working to change that.
And are there any more questions? Is there anyone out there with a question? Okay, I see another one here. Do organizations ever do simulated hack or attack drills and responses? Is that associated with this training? Is there any hands-on like that, or is it mainly the presentations?
Well, actually, we do have interactive labs for our instructor-led training. So in addition to the security awareness training that we offer online, we do have training that's the formal in-person training, very interactive. They have simulated attacks and things of that nature in those instructor-led courses. Those courses are more around our technological products and solutions, but we do offer the hands-on experience as well.
I would just like to mention that many times a consulting firm will come in and do what's called a penetration test of some sort, and they often involve social engineering attacks and so forth, a variety of interesting things, and it can be eye-opening for an organization to have an attack simulation or a penetration test like that. And I mean, it would be very prudent for the organization to take the results of that experience and wrap that into your training, because it really helps make the training far more realistic and apply greatly to the organization and the individual, and it really makes a big difference. So you can do that, and it really it's really powerful, because most of the attack sims and the penetration tests they will often show shocking vulnerabilities, and so it's quite an eye-opener.
Thank you, Danny. And I have another question here, and it starts with a statement, but basically, so if effectiveness of training is 90%, then don't you think the remaining 10% is enough to cause damage even greater than the 90% that you caught? So I think kind of an illustration of, that maybe how do you justify the training if that 10% can cause
okay. So
a lot of
I'd like to take this question. You know what? There is no perfect security, and there is no perfect training, and people are going to be people, and what you have to do is you have to take due care, and you have to make sure that you're protecting your resources and systems. And part of that equation is making sure people know what to do, how to do it, and how to respond in the event of an incident. And so it's true that the training is never 100%, but it is going to stop a big chunk of the obvious things, and you want to do that. I mean, well, let's think of an example in the physical world. People have cars with locks in them and alarm systems and kill switches and clubs and all different things. People still steal cars, even though you have all of those things in there. And this is just the nature of the world that we live in. Nothing is 100%. But I will tell you that if you can prevent an incident, if you can prevent one incident, your security training is probably paid for itself. And so, you know, you need to do it because it's the right thing to do. Just like you would lock the door to your house, you wouldn't leave it unlocked when you leave, or at least most people wouldn't. And so you would train your people because they need to know what to do.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, I remember being in an office and in a room where somebody that always opened up emails right in the morning, and she launched the I love you attack across the whole corporation, you know, before 7:30 in the morning. So, yeah, just the training on how do you handle emails appropriately is a huge issue. I have another question, and it's about using password management applications. Is that something that's handled in the training?
It's not explicitly focused on. I mean, it's mentioned, I believe, that, you know, one way of protecting your passwords is to store it in a password management system, and of course that has to be something that's approved by your particular organization. I mean, there's not much to say other than, you know, it's a good idea. I personally use one. I have over 450 passwords stored in an encrypted password manager, and it is marvelous. And by the way, I don't know any of those passwords. Everything is very long and random, and it's a powerful way of protecting your passwords.
Thank you, Danny. I don't see additional questions. Is there anyone out there that has an additional question?
I see one here from Yakov Simkin, and he says, you have to assume hackers take all security training, formal, informal, and learn compliance requirements. Then they find a whole or social engineering techniques, which makes email look legitimate. Assuming this, how many attacks training would not prevent among all attacks? So the fact of the matter is the bad guys are actually very good at knowing the rules and regulations and really know how to game the system very well. And it turns out, particularly with the phishing attacks, they're doing a great job of making the emails and the associated Excel and Word attachments look really legitimate. And one of the things that they're doing actually is fascinating is people put so much information in their social media that it's actually pretty easy to get enough information to sound like that particular individual. So they're very effective. The bad guys are very effective with the phishing attacks. And so that's why it's so important to make sure that you have a strong a phishing awareness program and a strong incident response program in place to address this. And so, you know, the attackers are really good. I mean, let's just be honest. They are really, really good. And all it takes is for one user to open an email. And there's a number of high-profile breaches that have happened just because of that. One user opened an email and allowed an attacker a toehold into the organization, and they were able to do tremendous, tremendous damage. So it is a battle. It is really a battle. The bad guys are sophisticated. They have lots of smart people, lots of tools. There's a strong financial motivation for the attackers, so and the likelihood of them getting caught is actually pretty low. So it makes sense in a sick kind of way. Crime does pay in a sick kind of way, and so they're good. And that means that we have to really redouble our efforts in terms of the technology solutions that we have in place in terms of the training that we provide our people so they know what to do, as well as in terms of having processes in place to handle these issues and to get them remediated.
Thank you, Danny. And I see here we probably have time for one more question, and I see Eric has a question. So associated with testers that are doing security testing and they use automated tool, is there a way to integrate this type of security awareness training with using the tools?
Well, I don't think directly the awareness training integrates with the tools. We have classes for software testers to learn about the specifics of how to do vulnerability testing, to look for vulnerabilities in software. And so a lot of that is actually done manually because it turns out many of the tools have pretty significant but dangerous software security bugs. And so knowing how to do that manually is a really important part of the tester's toolkit. So the testing is really focused on the training for the testers is really focused on the attacks and how they can be done manually by the tester.
Right. That would be more under our role-based training tracks as opposed to the security awareness program.
Thank you. And I think we have a couple more slides. Is that correct?
Yes. And
Yes.
let me just do that for you. So there's the thank you slide. And now, Anita?
Okay. As I alluded to, HP Enterprise Security Software has a lot of products and solutions that are more technology-based. So we have 4 different pillars that make up ESP. We have HP Tipping Point, which is network security. Then we have ArcSight, which is security intelligence and event management. Fortify is application security, so you're going to get some of those programs that we talked about just a minute ago. And then HP Atala, which is payments and data security. So we have programs and educational offerings not only for the security awareness overview, but also for these products and solutions. We have both instructor-led training as well as virtual. We have some e-learning offerings, so we have a variety. They can all be found on ESP University. We're running out of time here, but I just wanted to note that these slides will be available on the Vivid website. So we need to wrap up, but if you need to catch any of these resources, they'll be available on the Vivid website. Training plan guide, we have blogs, and we also have social media.
And can you go back one slide, Danny?
Yeah.
And I know that there's some of these courses are being offered, the instructor-led courses will be at HP Discover. There's a link here through Vivid if you want to save some money attending HP Discover, and then you can also look at some of those training courses that are available there in Las Vegas, June 2nd through the 4th. Next slide, please. And again, we'd like to thank you for attending this webinar. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Anita. And thank you, Mary. Please, if you're an attendee, complete the short survey and check us out at vivid-worldwide.org.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.